Ellen Reed, Kirkwood. Brooke Seehey, Ledoux.
Ellen is excused. I'm sorry.
Okay. Jenna Lee Blackwood Lindbergh. Bridget Wildshoots Litzinger.
I'm here.
Hi, Bridget.
Hello.
Okay. Kim Gifford, Maplewood, Richmond Heights.
She texts me she is here.
Yeah. Mary Meckler, Maplewood, Richmond Heights. Patricia Clark, Normandy. Vern Scott, Normandy. Me, I'm here. Shauna Barton, Parkway. Krista Goldman, Parkway. Ashley Jameson, Parkway. Dr. Carter's here. Carrie Ellis, Pattonville. Rob Eaton, Rittner. Rebecca Fleek, Rockwood. Denise Francis, Southview. And Shanna Rudolph, Valley Park. Okay.
Did you call Holly Tinker?
No, I don't think what district is she? Or what?
Rockwood.
Oh,
She's
you're right.
excused.
Who's new? I'll keep her. Okay, I'll make sure she gets added on there.
No problem.
Okay.
Do we have quorum? Latoya Nelson just joined.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Now we have the approval. Oh, she's rejoining. Now we have the approval of the agenda.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pretty much one page.
I learned something new. So those of you who do not have the agenda, I have just put it in the chat.
I motion that we approve the agenda as presented. This is Christina.
I wasn't ready, Christina.
Oh, sorry, babe.
Pre-motion.
I just put the agenda into the chat. And Christina has already made the motion. Well, their motion was to accept the agenda as printed. Christina has what is the first thing?
I've made the motion to approve
Okay,
the agenda as printed. Now we need a second.
I need a second.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt, but my computer died during the whole attendance thing. I did get to sign in on the chat, but I just, if you were roll calling, wanted you to know that Leah Heinz is here.
I got you, babe. You got to love those college students. Yes, man. So who seconded?
Me, Percy, I second.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to accept the agenda as written. Okay, so we are going to move forward with the minutes, the adoption of the minutes for January.
Do we have to vote on the agenda?
Thank you. All in favor for accepting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, moving forward. We're moving to The adoption of the minutes. Now I don't have that. So somebody else had to put that in the minutes.
One second, please.
Gracias.
Okay, here it comes. Okay, here we go.
Okay. Are there any changes to the minutes for January? Hearing none, may I have a motion to accept the minutes as printed for January to adopt?
I motion that this is Christina Blankenship with Clayton. I motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
May I have a second?
This is Maria Martinez. I second.
It has been moved and seconded by Maria Martinez. All in favor of the motion?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye. Melissa, I just saw Rebecca, so she's here. Did you get that for attendance? All right. Excellent day. Excellent day. All right, so we're moving forward. We just approved the minutes. We did not have any new members. And so renewed members, we will vote you in April and in May. And we'll talk more about that later on in the PAC business. At this juncture, we will have the superintendent's report by Dr. Keenan and Chief Wendy Pendergrass. We will also have the legislative update. We will have our SSD presentation and our FACE presentation. After that, we'll have PAC business. I am stopped sharing my screen, Chief Pendergrass, and I'm allow you to do it.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Dr. Keenan, I will pull it up as you start speaking.
Okay, sounds great. So welcome, everybody. I can't believe it's February already. We are excited to kind of finish out the second half of this year. Right now, we're planning a lot for our ESY, our summer school programming. So just keep that in mind that as we are posting information on our website, you'll get all the summer school programs and when the dates are going to be there. So if you want to sign up for that, ESY is required for students who have an IEP and they do have to qualify for it. We have opened up our positions so we can start to hire people, our staff, for when we have our ESY, and we have over 900 people so far signed up who are willing to work during their ESY time. So we're really excited about that. We are going to be having our budget updates to our board, and so we're going to be approving our a preliminary budget, which is going to be presented to our board. It's really focused in on our partner districts and our SSD schools, making sure that we're supporting our staff and supporting our students. All of the work that we are doing this year is really focused in on how we're continuing to enhance our programming and support all of the students' needs with not only with reading and math, but social emotional learning. That has been kind of a trend since we came back from COVID. There's more social emotional needs for our students and being able to increase in our services for that and matching those needs with our staffing. And then finally, so our governing council meets in March, on March 6th, and they will be electing our board members. We have 3 board members who are up for our for positions this year. We have Dr. Cuneo, who is our current president. He is up for re-election. He's going unopposed. We have Dr. Asner, who is a director, and he is over Parkway. I'm sorry, he's over, not Parkway, he's in Rockwood and Clayton. And he is re-electing, he is put his name back in, and he is being unopposed. For our sub-district 1, Director Faulkner, Curtis Faulkner, he's been on the board for 4 years. He is being opposed by another candidate. So they will be going to the governing council. They will be interviewed by them, and then the governing council will elect them. So we might have a new person, we might not. We like to have stability on our board and to make sure that we're continuing all the work we're doing. I do want people to know that with our president, we can only have our president be in the president position for no more than 3 years. And this is Dr. Cuneo's third term. So we will be having a new president regardless of who's going to be on our board. So that's typical. That's what we do with our PAC. That's what we do with our SSD board too. So we'll be doing that in March. Come April and May, we'll be really focused in on ending the school year, graduations, our salutes, banquets, and making sure that we're all prepared for the end of the year and moving into our summer school programming. So that's my update for today.
Thank you, Dr. Keenan. What we'd like to do next, tonight we have several presentations. We have a change of placement presentation. We also have Behavior Plans 101 that's going to be provided by our socially emotional affective practice specialist. Then we'll close with an update from the family and community engagement. So lots happening on the floor legislatively. I have attached, and I will also provide this PowerPoint presentation to Dr. Carter, so you can actually have access. Some of the House bills and Senate bills that are very important or that are being discussed on the floors right now are open enrollment for K-12 schools. What that will do is provide, if that is passed, would provide families the opportunity of attending other schools in the district. Special school district has asked for privileges that we, because of our uniqueness with partnering with our partner districts, have an agreement with our partner districts prior to them accepting open enrollment, meaning that we are able to have conversations with the districts as to what grade levels, so we can make sure we're prepared for staffing, we can make sure we're prepared for finances, we can make sure we're prepared for all of that, so our students have a seamless process. On the Senate committee, there are 82 different bills that have taken place. The ones that basically have an education overview is, of course, the Save the Women Sports Act that is relating to the transgender athletes being able to participate in sports, and then the designation of local control with school districts. One of the biggest things is the Parents' Bill of Rights that is very controversial with the provisions of CRT. So we are watching that. Change of placement will be brought to us by Dr. Kelly Grigsby, who is the Executive Director of Schools and Programs. Kelly?
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the change of placement process. It's an internal process, but we use that process when we are considering moving a student from their home school district or their home school within a district. It's used primarily to consider more restrictive settings such as public or private separate placements. It's, as you know, I mean, most of you being part of an IEP team with your children, placement's an IEP team decision, and these placements really driven by services written into the IEP. At Special School District, we provide a continuum of services. So we offer everything from consult all the way up to homebound, which is our most restrictive placement. Least restrictive, we want to keep students in their least restrictive setting, which means where we can ensure that they're making progress and learning at their highest levels with the least amount of supports and the highest level of independence as possible. Next slide, please. So why do we use this process? It's an internal process. It's really a data collection process where we're taking information such as interventions that have been attempted, consultation with our experts in our schools around social emotional or autism. We're taking all of this information and putting it together so we can make sure that as a team, we have tried all the interventions possible when we're considering moving a student out of their home school or their home district. That decision should not be taken lightly. And so we value that information to make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable for that. It's a huge impact when we think about moving a student to a public or a private separate placement or school, because they're leaving their neighborhood peers, they're leaving many opportunities that they may have within their partner district. But sometimes that's necessary, and we need to make sure that that's available for our students as well. Next slide, please. So again, we use this process when we're considering a move to a more restrictive, so a public or private separate school. So to give you an example, Ackerman is considered a public separate school. Southview Up north, Ackerman and Northview are public separate schools. In our central corridor, we have Litzinger and New Owner. And in our southern part of the district, we have Southview. Some of the agencies that we contract with for private separate placements include Every Child's Hope, Great Circle, the Lead School, Logos, just to name a few. We also use this process when we're considering and hoping to move a student from a more restrictive setting, such as a public or private placement, back into their home school. We want to gather all the information that we've used to help a student really be successful, who's ready then to make the move back to their neighborhood school. We also use this process when we are considering a family or guardian request. Next slide, please. Do you have any questions?
I know Denise Bursey, she had a lot of questions. Denise, did she make it back?
Yeah, sorry, my internet is getting the best of me today. So we'll see how long I get to stay on this time before it gets me back out. So I missed part of it. So I don't know if you might have covered it. I know this topic is definitely important to me, especially since my daughter's 8th grade about to transition into high school for 9th grade. So just trying to learn more about that process of how those schools are chosen. Do they typically go to their home school, or do they go to the provided school through SSD? I know here in Ferguson Florissant, we have Northview as high school, and then McClure North would be her home school. So how is that determined during their transitional IEP to what school they would attend?
So we look at, again, it goes back to being an IEP team decision, but it's really based on if your child is making progress on their goals and making progress in their school with the interventions and accommodations and supports that are in place, the services that are in place. Have we exhausted all of the services that are available within that home school, whether it be, I'm assuming maybe Cross Keys, I'm not sure.
Yes.
And then McClure North. So really that high school team and the middle school team would come together, they would partner, they would bring that information to the IEP. So you would have an idea, but we wouldn't consider a change of placement to a public separate placement unless your child was not making progress on the current placement. And we've really exhausted all of the services, accommodations, and supports that would be available.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I can't see everybody, so if you have a question, just
Do the raise hand signal so you can pop up to my screen. I'm not seeing it.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's say, for example, that the school does not offer the tutoring in math, for example, that's appropriate for the child's education for them to get to grade level. And does change of placement also include, not just going to a whole different school, but getting some kind of services from like a math specialist or some kind of entity that does tutoring?
No, that would be outside of this process. Accessing tutoring or additional services outside of the IEP process would be handled in the home school or the partner district. This really is a school placement our school assignment that's based on the IEP placement. So we may provide some of those things as part of our programming at one of our schools, but it's not something that you would access from the partner district. You would access, if your student's in the partner district, you would access the supports there or privately.
And so is there anything, any SSD information that describes how a parent goes through that process of requesting? Because just what the procedure is or how to, data or anything?
Requesting what? I'm sorry, requesting tutoring or requesting a change of placement?
Requesting tutoring because the student's not progressing in math and they're not going to be able to graduate because they can't do algebra. And the district isn't providing appropriate instruction. So is there any kind of process that a parent would go to
In that situation, Mary, what I would encourage you to do is work through the case manager and the special sped coordinator or the special education coordinator for your school. They would be able to partner with the partner district to determine, is the IEP appropriate as an IEP team, but also to be able to determine what additional services and supports might be available through your partner district.
I have a quick question. Basically, once the child has exhausted everything and parents are keeping them home because they know that if they send them to school, it will be an escalation and a suspension, and they're getting close. Wendy, you shaking your head? No. What?
Go ahead.
Oh, there'll be an escalation and there'll be a suspension. And then, so the parent just keeps the child home when the child is not really regulated. And they really want a different setting for their child, but they don't know how to navigate the process because, first of all, we're dealing with parent who may not understand all the ins and outs of it. We also
So I understand what you're saying. You're
Okay,
concerned
thank you.
about. Sure, you're a parent's choosing to keep a student at home because they feel like they may be excluded through suspension. Remember, our students have rights under IDEA with regards to suspension and relatedness to their disability. So that's one area I would say. But your gateway to accessing change of placement or additional supports in your IEP is always going to be that direct contact with case manager. And if that's not helpful, then your special education coordinator. And so then if that's not helpful, then you would go through your director. So we come in as the SSD schools, we come to the table once the partner districts have determined that they need more supports than they're able to provide in that homeschool situation or within the home district.
So how do they jump past the director?
So
Because nothing is happening on the case manager level, nothing is happening with the SEC, and nothing is happening with the director. How do they jump over that to get what they need for their particular child because their child is not in their least restrictive environment?
So again, it's the same situation as if you had a concern with a principal then you would contact me. And the partner districts, my counterpart is Tammy Aydt. So if you're not receiving what you're needing as far as supports and you've exhausted the case manager and the special education coordinator and the director, then really Tammy Aydt would be your next point of contact.
Okay. All right. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I have another question to piggyback off you really quick. You mentioned there's provisions provided in regards for students in SSD for suspensions. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So with what are those protections with suspensions?
So when we have students with disabilities, once a student reaches that 10th day of suspension, we have an obligation to consider whether or not that may be related to the student's disability. So accumulation of 10 days, we would look at whether there was a pattern in suspension, length of suspension, frequency of suspension, proximity of suspension. So we would look at that to determine if there's a pattern. If a student receives 10 days and then an additional amount of time, again, a manifestation would be held at that time. We would consider evaluations, current IEPs, placement, all of the information that we have available to talk about the student's disability and how that impacts them, and then how that would may or may not have impacted the behavior the student received a suspension for.
Are the suspensions concurrent, or is it just like one suspension that's 10 days, or is it a multitude over time?
There's no action required until the 11th day of suspension. At that point, we look at pattern, or we have to hold a manifestation because it's a longer than a 10-day suspension. But a suspension wouldn't, at least in my experience in St. Louis County, wouldn't exceed 10 days unless there was a discipline hearing involved in a concurrent suspension. Several suspensions may exceed 10 days, and that's where we would look at a manifestation for relatedness.
Can you explain what a manifestation is?
A manifestation is when when members of the IEP team come together to consider the behavior that the student has been suspended for and how their disability may or may not have impacted that behavior. So if that behavior may have been caused as a result of a student's disability, then we would consider that related to their disability. And then there are provisions for that. If it's not related to the disability, then the suspension may continue. I would encourage you also, if you have a student that's getting suspended frequently, don't wait for the 10 days. Call the team back together and consider interventions and other supports. Look at that behavior plan. Really think about what supports are in place and what we can tweak in order to support the student in staying in school.
We got Mayor Fitzgerald.
So for a parent, if the behavior is interfering with the child's learning or that of others, the parent can request a behavior improvement, a BIP and an FBA, functional behavioral assessment, to be done, correct? Parents don't have to wait till your kid's been suspended for 10 days total or 10 days in succession. It can happen after 1 day or 2 days.
Correct. Yes.
And that puts the responsibility on the district to respond and support the family and the child. And
it puts a responsibility on the district to respond with regards to considering whether that is warranted, and then to begin the process, or to let you know why they're not. But yes, it does. It would, asking for certain things absolutely brings the team together and encourages a response to an action.
And what was that called again?
I think Mary was talking about a functional behavior assessment or behavior intervention plan. You can also, we have less formal crisis plans. We have behavior support plans. I mean, we have a lot of different options. Really, it's going to be about getting that team back together or starting that conversation.
And you can request an IEP meeting, and then you can waive the 10-day notice. You can say, I need an emergency IEP meeting. I've done it where my kid's not coming to school until we have a plan. Till we have a meeting, because like that parent, she's not sending her child to school because they just keep getting suspended and they're not getting help. So this is a way to keep the child safe while requiring the district to do their job in creating a plan to support that child.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. If you have any more questions, put in the chat. Dr. Grigsby would be more than happy to answer those questions at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grigsby.
Thank you, Dr. Grigsby. Now we're going to have Carrie hopefully answer some of the questions for families about exactly what is a functional assessment and a behavior plan. Carrie?
Yep. Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me here tonight to speak about behavior intervention plans. I think this will answer some of the questions. The behavior intervention plan ultimately is to stop that change of placement from happening. It's really a plan that the team puts together to change that school environment so your child or the student exhibits challenging behavior less, right? So the BIP is, I always say, it's very little to do about the student. It really is, it needs to be framed. What are the changes that are going to occur in this building and the staff members so the student exhibits the behavior less? So we can go on to the next slide. All right. So this is special school district's BIP process. So the first step is to identify the student, and we're going to go over that in a little bit more detail of who are the kiddos that we need to consider a BIP for. After the student has been identified that their behaviors really are impacting their education, we've exhausted all other interventions. The next step is that the team will hold a reevaluation meeting. So when you were talking earlier, we kind of jumped right to the FBA, but we really don't do that. We really hold so a parent would request a RED meeting. And that's where we would really look at all of the data and decide, is a FBA warranted? Do we need a BIP? Because there are other interventions that we need to make sure we've tried first before we go to this really intensive intervention. So we would hold a RED, and if the team decides that we need more information on that behavior and the function of it, and we need a behavior intervention plan, then we agree as a team, and then the FBA process starts. So case manager holds the RED. The FBA process is led by our school psych. And the FBA process entails observations, interviews, and some rating scales. And the school psych will come up with a hypothesis of the function of the behavior. Then there is an eligibility meeting where the school psych will present that hypothesis. And then within 30 days, we need to hold an IEP and we need to get that BIP put in place. After the BIP is put in place, then we do BIP training and we do fidelity checks of the BIP to make sure that all the prevention strategies are in place and that it's being implemented with fidelity. So next. Yep, so we're going to talk about student identification. We're going to talk about the BIP. And so the student identification, that's perfect. Thank you, Wendy. So we have to do, DESE says we have a mandatory FBA and BIP if we're in these two circumstances. So if a student has been placed in an alternative setting for behavior dangerous to him or herself or others, or if a student has been placed in an alternative setting for 45 days due to drug or weapons violation. So anything that's linked in blue, you can click on and you can read all of DESE's fine print and details. But if those two things happen, if you have a question, you can go ahead and just raise your, I'll try to look, like, I don't know if I'll be able to find if someone has a question. If you can save the questions for the end, we can go back and revisit those. So if one of those two things have happened, we have a mandatory BIP that we will do the FBA and the BIP. The next slide, we will consider an FBA and a BIP. So this is whenever we're in that discernment time. Do we want to hold a red and decide if we need the BIP? The data that we'll look at is, has the student been non-responsive to tier 1 and 2-tier intervention efforts? Does that student's behavior impede his or her learning or the learning of others? Or has it been resulting in disciplinary action? So we talked about once a student is suspended with a disability, suspended at day 11, we hold a manifestation. And so if whether it's related to the disability or not, we may really look at those suspensions and decide as a team, we need to really study this behavior and write a plan to prevent it. We'll also look at if the student possesses a threat to him or herself. And then we'll always look at a lot of, multiple risk factors, medical diagnosis, lack of stability, neglect, environmental adversities. So if a student has some struggles like that and all of this is together, we look at that and we will decide most likely that we need to go ahead and do that FBA. Next slide. All right, so click one more time. This is really important for parents to know, is that behavior intervention plan, what that means is we're going to write a goal, which we know what goals mean. Goals mean more time in the special education setting. So it's super important that we really make sure that all tier 1 and tier 2 interventions have been fully implemented and are in place. In this slide deck that you have, anything that's blue is underlined. So you don't have to click on it, but if you, for your own information, there's a checklist of tier 1 interventions that the gen ed and our partner districts are really responsible for making sure are in place. And then the tier 2 interventions, Kelly mentioned student support plans. We can put plans in place without going through the FBA process. The FBA process takes usually around 30 days. And so we can have a team meeting next week and put a student support plan in place. And that does not require special education minutes. It really just documents all of the prevention strategies that need to be in place for that student so they exhibit the behavior less. So one more click. So once we make sure all tier 1 interventions are in place, tier 2 interventions are in place, and we've tried that student support plan and it's just not working, then it is time to hold the reevaluation meeting, decide on the FBA, and write a BIP. Next page. Just want to hit on the point why tier 1 and tier 2 interventions are so important. And the reason why is because our brains operate sequentially, right? So the first part of our brain, the kids' brains, when they're walking into a classroom that lights up is that amygdala, and that's your survival brain or your fight, flight, or flee brain. And so that is asking the question, am I safe? Am I physically safe? And am I emotionally safe? That's that red part of the brain. If the answer is no, then the kid just stays in that fight, flight, or flee. They're eloping, they are aggressive, and that's when they're not feeling emotionally safe. Those tier 1 practices, We went back to the slide before. Those are practices that are put in place in classrooms to make students feel emotionally safe. So that's why it's very important is we need the students to feel emotionally safe. And the next one is connected. So does a teacher like me? Am I accepted unconditionally? Are there peers that like me? When students aren't feeling connected, that's when we see a lot of attention-seeking behaviors. And so we need tier 1 and 2 interventions to make kids feel emotionally safe, make them feel connected. And then their prefrontal cortex, which is that green part of their brain, is fired up and ready to learn. But what we see sometimes is we're really lagging on those tier 1 interventions. So students aren't feeling emotionally safe, they're not feeling connected, and so they're having struggles academically and even using those social and emotional and behavioral skills. So next slide. We're short on time. So the fundamental truths regarding challenging behavior. Oh, I'm sorry, one more back. So what we know about challenging
Miss Carrie, you're not short on time. Take your time. This is important.
Okay, good. Thank you. What we know about behavior is that it's this collision that happens, right? So in that school environment, there's social pressures, there's stimuli, there's demands, and there's expectations that students do not have the skills to meet. It could be academic skills, communication skills. We're going to talk about social, emotional, and behavioral skill deficits. So that collision happens, and the signal that that collision has happened is that challenging behavior. It's aggression, it's eloping, it's struggling to transition. So all of those behaviors are just a signal that tells the adults in the building that this collision has happened. So what's extremely important, and for you parents to make sure that if you're in a meeting where a BIP is being constructed for your child, make sure that we have laid out what those expectations are in the environment that your student does not have the skills to meet yet. And so we want to stop the collision from happening. We want to write in the plan what expectations are going to be set aside, what stimuli and demands are going to be changed, so this collision doesn't happen until we build the skills in that special education setting. Next slide. These are the social, emotional, and behavioral skills. Special school district, we follow the CASEL competencies, and kids, human beings, need self-awareness skills, we need self-management skills, responsible decision-making skills, relationship skills, and social awareness or communication skills to really meet all of those demands in that, educational environment. If a student is lagging in any of those skill areas, that's when we see the challenging behavior and disengagement. So it's also really important to hone in on what are the specific social, emotional, and behavioral skill deficits, so we can make sure in the SPED setting we're really doing targeted instruction on those skills so the student can eventually meet the expectations that they're struggling to meet. Next slide. All right. Just a couple of things that causes these social, emotional, and behavioral skill deficits. We know that kids really have lacked the opportunity to learn appropriate behavior, right? So, they have technology, they don't have to wait like we had to wait whenever we were little. They don't necessarily have to entertain themselves because of technology that's in their lives. And so kids come to us more and more lagging some of those just basic school behavior skills. So that's one reason why there is just the students have just had a lack of opportunity to learn these skills based on the world that they're growing up in. There's also, of course, a biological or genetic root. We have brain chemical imbalances, brain structures, pathway formations that really impedes a student's ability to learn and use these skills. And then we have trauma exposure. So none of that doesn't necessarily matter why. When we have a student that's exhibiting challenging behavior, we just know there's a skill deficit, and the reason why is irrelevant. We just need to build the skill and change the environment while we do that. Next page. All right, so like I said, the BIPS is a plan to stop this collision from happening. It's going to really spell out what skills we need to be teaching and how we're going to change the environment. Next slide. Yes, so before we can stop this collision, that's when we really need to study the behavior. And that's what that FBA process that I told you the school psych leads up, that FBA process studies the behavior. So next slide. So again, it's a process that's used to figure out what is causing the challenging behavior, and it's interviews, observations, and assessments. On the next slide, you can just keep clicking through. The FBA will spell out all of this entire cycle of behavior for the students. So it will spell out what settings does a behavior typically or commonly happen. That's called the antecedent. It also spells out what are the skill deficits that the student has, what's the signals or behaviors that they exhibit, and then what's the consequence that kind of keeps this behavior, this maladaptive behavior working for them. And so once we receive all of those really important information, we can put together a great plan to stop the cycle. All right, so one slide back. How much time do I have, Dr. Carter?
We're here to 9 o'clock.
Whatever you need, Carrie.
Okay,
We're here
great.
to 9 o'clock. Let me say this real quick.
Yes.
EF 400, you are done at 8 o'clock. You may leave at that time.
Okay, if you click where it says click here, this is a Google document that just has all of the boxes on SSD's behavior intervention plan. And I wanted to go ahead and provide it to you. While I know it's a lot of information, but it's really valuable because it tells you what should be in every box of the behavior intervention plan. So if we go up just to the little yellow boxes, sorry, at the top, we'll define the behavior that we want to. The first box, we're going to define the behavior that we want to reduce. The second box, extremely important. These are the precursory behaviors. These are the behaviors that happen before the behaviors in box 1. And that's when the team needs to intervene. When they, we know when a kid a lot of times comes in and it's not going to be a great day. Maybe they have their hoodie on or they're sitting in a corner. And that's when we intervene and change the student's day before they exhibit challenging behavior. So we miss this sometimes, teams sometimes miss. Usually, so behaviors in box 1, we do 2 to 3. We'll try to do a behavior that happens earlier in the cycle of behavior, and then usually the behavior that we really need to stop. So aggression or eloping, that usually is what's brought the student to this place. The third box, the hypothesis of the function, is what the school psych will put together after they've studied all of the behavior, and they'll figure out what is keeping this behavior working for them. We'll write a goal. So like I said, this is why a behavior intervention plan is a ladder intervention. We really need to consider that student support plan first, because we're going to have to write a goal and we're going to have to teach that goal. So that means more minutes in the special education setting. And then if we go down, this is the really important part, the intervention strategies. So again, we're acknowledging that this student has social, emotional, and behavioral skill deficits. We acknowledge that they can't meet right now the expectations of students that don't have these skill deficits. So the first box is really spelling out what can the student do, right? So instead of exhibiting aggression, they can respond to an adult prompt to take a reset break or to calm down, to take a calming break. We're not going to expect them to just be perfectly calm all the time, but we are going to help teach them how to use calming strategies, respond to the prompt to go to that section, and we'll really support and teach the student that. Which brings us to the second box, and that is the strategies that we're going to use to teach the replacement behaviors. This needs to be done in a really explicit way with role playing, modeling, practicing, and we really need to have it taught across all school settings. So of course, we will explicitly teach it in a special education setting, but we also need it reinforced throughout all settings. We're going to get better outcomes with that. The third box is what I always say is the most important box. This is where we document the changes that are going to happen in that school building, so your student or your child exhibits that behavior less. It could be an environmental change. It could be a specific staff activity or a staff behavior. It can be really specific ways that we increase the predictability and the routine of that environment. So it should be really individualized and specialized for that student. So I always say in this part of the behavior intervention plan, if you have a list of triggers, that's usually where we can switch those into prevention strategies. So if an adult approaching the student from the back is a trigger, we would write in this section, staff will only approach the students from the front, right? So some kids don't like to be approached from the back. It makes them jump or feel anxious. Really in this section, unfortunately, we also have to write a lot of specifics about relationship building, because we know that that is a huge intervention, and really curbing this behavior is adults forming relationships with students, modeling compassion, modeling problem solving, modeling frustration tolerance when they're exhibiting challenging behavior. So we really spell out in this section a lot of those strategies, because that's where really we get the best outcomes. And then we can scroll down a little bit more. Strategies to reduce the reinforcement of problem behaviors. This is really where that FBA comes into play also, is the FBA is a functional behavior assessment. So if the student is doing the maladaptive or the challenging behavior to get attention, we don't want the behavior to work for them. So that's where we really spell out, if they're exhibiting this behavior, we may do some planned ignoring, but we're also going to be teaching the student how to get attention appropriately. In our prevention strategy, we're going to give the student a good amount of connection, and we're going to give them that attention so they don't have to rely on this maladaptive behavior to get that connection and to get that attention that is a basic human need that they're seeking. So that's in box 4. And then box 5 is where we really lay out how we are going to reinforce those alternative behaviors. What we know about behavior change is it sticks and it happens more permanently when we positively reinforce that positive behavior. So data is kind of showing that consequences don't necessarily result in a lot of permanent behavior change. But when we do a positive verbal reinforcement or positive reinforcement, when the student is exhibiting more adaptive behaviors, it releases those endorphins in the brain, and that behavior change starts to become somewhat addictive in what they want to do. And so because of that chemical release, and the behavior change is more permanent. So it's really important, that box 5, to make sure that there's a lot of positive reinforcement for that alternative behavior use. And then the last box is just, we lay out the crisis plan, and there's just some information on that, but that's pretty specific for each student. And then we can go back to the presentation, because I want to definitely leave time for questions, because I know I've really presented a lot of information. So I'm opening up the floor to questions now.
I think Courtney had a question. I didn't get your last name.
Miles Schaefer.
Okay, go ahead, Beck.
So there's newer research on brain science of behaviors that is sort of evolved from believing that behaviors are something, like we've moved on a little bit into more of a brain state model a lot. And I'm sort of wondering if SSD is sort of looking at some of that, like the brain state model, the polyvagal theory, understanding the neuroception, the faulty neuro, and how behaviors occur, because there's newer research, and I just am wondering what if SSD is going to be like, looking at some of that and maybe shifting.
Yes, well, if you look at that behavior intervention plan, and what Courtney's getting at is historically, in the world of behavior, it's been if the student is doing this behavior for attention, and so that has been deemed the function. And so we historically have tried to extinguish the behavior by not feeding the function. And what research is showing is it's of course much more complicated than that. And so it really is about skills in skills or pathways in the brain to work through and handle some of those expectations. So Courtney, the collision, the social and emotional behavioral skill deficits, along with the expectations in the environment, that collision piece is not a lot of function-based prevention strategies. It's a lot of practicing role playing, modeling those skills, positively reinforcing the replacement behavior. And, if a student—
the brain doesn't, the places where you learn a behavior or learn a skill and where you're triggered are not always connected.
Right.
And so, and the other thing is, it's common thought that you should not ignore children who need attention.
Yes.
Because if they have a need for attention, there's a reason. They feel disconnected. They feel, so I'm just a little concerned by some of the behavioral sort of piece and not really understanding sort of the science of what the there's a lot of really good research that is being done by Mona Delahook and Lori D. Sotes in Indianapolis, and all these. And I would really love to see SSD used to really embrace some of these models, because I think we would see better, I think it really helped the kids, our students.
Lori
and Courtney, I think that is absolutely something that we can look for in the future.
Great. That's all I want. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I do want to say, Lori, though, we have STB cohorts for our teachers based on Lori's book. So the Compassion Over Compliance book is the foundation of all of our SCB teachers that come through our academy are exposed to that. And our behavior intervention plans, I just want, especially when the social emotional behavioral EPS is involved, we assure that that is the foundation of the behavior intervention plans. That's what the prevention strategies is all about. So we're there. We're wanting to get there even deeper, but we're there.
And thank you, Courtney, for bringing that up. But also we have to keep in mind that this is an information gathering session. And if you want to have further discussion, they will have their information. They will have their information on the website for you to have those discussions. But we're here to make sure that parents get the information that are pertinent to them today. All right. Thank you. Oh, come on, Mary. Then we're going to wrap this one up.
So I'm really happy you brought that up, because this is all the stuff I've been reading and learning about. And, I was taught the behaviorism stuff 30 years ago when I was a special ed teacher. And I'm just really happy there's some movement and SSD's looking into this. I want to ask about pervasive demand avoidance. I read about a lot of that on Facebook groups all over the world, people who are autistic, because a child having that condition is not going to respond well at all to any of this. There's going to be a whole need for a different approach. And then my other question was about what if a parent doesn't agree with the BIP and the FBA? I went through this. And specifically, I was told, I wanted them to look at my student wasn't doing the schoolwork. He wasn't able to be on task, and I wanted a task analysis. And I was told, that's not part of the BIP or the FBA. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. so I just like, can we talk about that? Because I was told, oh, it's only for the really challenging behaviors. And I'm like, well, he's not doing schoolwork, you know? So is that still true?
Well, I mean, you're an IEP team member. And so remember, we decide to do the FBA at that red, you know, and so looking at the data of if your child is not completing work, then that would be data that would be reflected in the reevaluation meeting. And then we would need to decide, do we need more information on why they're not completing work, right? And then if we decided to do an FBA, we can study whatever behavior, whatever the team decides are the behaviors that are impacting that student's education. You know, and so like I said, we usually do 2 to 3 behaviors. And you know what? Work refusal is typically one of the behaviors that's in that cycle. So a lot of times, most elopement, aggression, where those higher level behaviors kind of start off with that. And we've got to get to the root of why the students not starting the work, completing the work, and the FBA gives us a lot of that information. But you know, we need to make sure that we get that information so we can work at the root of it and not just trying to modify behavior. Did I miss some of your other questions? Were you feeling like students with an educational diagnosis of autism may need a different approach for a behavior intervention plan?
I think every child is unique, and every autistic child is unique. There are some that have pervasive demand avoidance. I just wondered if you've heard of it. And if you train your folks about it, because our area coordinator had never heard of it, and she used to be an autism EPS. So I'm like, oh boy, this is you have to approach everything sideways with a kid. You know, you can't do any straight on demands because they shut down or they react strongly.
Right.
And I just thought back to my years of teaching. I'm like, oh wow, this explained a few students. So I just wondered if you'd heard of it and you were.
Well, there is an autism EPS. I'm a social emotional behavioral EPS, which is we focus a little bit more on students with that emotional disturbance or OHI diagnosis, really what it's an emotional root of the behavior. But regardless, work refusal, there are a lot of little strategies like you were talking about to get students to begin work. And we do a lot of momentum building, right? Of course, breaking something down into a very small step, making it extremely attainable and heavily reinforcing getting started. And then building momentum from something that is pretty easy for them and then working their way up. So there's a lot of little strategies that we do to get. And then also, of course, shortening, giving one problem at a time. There's just a lot of things that we can put in that behavior intervention plan to be done across all school settings. So students do start the work, complete the work, and do really what to the best of their ability in that moment.
Carrie, we have one more question and then we're going to allow you to wrap this up. Rebecca?
I just had a question about, I've never heard of this SEB role. Is that someone who could be consulted in a partner district for a team or?
Yep. So there's 6 of us across St. Louis County. I work in the southern part of the county, but you are through the case manager and your SSD area, the coordinator, you can request to have an SEB EPS be a part of the team. Like I said, we really like to start with those student support plans. I can't tell you how many times that we've put a student support plan in place where we've documented a lot of prevention strategies, and it's really changed without going through the FBA process and all of that. And so we lead those meetings and help the team discern interventions.
So if you already have a BIP, can you still request a support meeting and request SEB?
Yeah. I mean, we definitely, we do fidelity checks of behavior intervention plans that are already in place. And then the team can come together and decide, are there edits that need to be made to the BIP? Do we need to, that prevention strategies box really should be the biggest part of the IEP. So you take a look at that, and, you know, if it's not pretty beefy, then you may want to look at it and say, you know what, do we have everything in place to really prevent this behavior while we teach the skills, and are we teaching the right skills? So that's just the really two important parts that I want us all to be aware of.
Thank you so much.
So can I, oh, go ahead, Rebecca. Can I piggyback? So how do you go about getting a consult? I mean,
Through
you
the
just
case
say-
manager and the coordinator. Yep, the SSD coordinator and your case manager. So, and they reach out. We have relationships with all the teachers. So they'll know who to reach out to.
So for a parent who may be afraid, what would be the process? Just shoot an email to the case manager and say, hey, I want to consult with SEB, or walk us through that.
Yeah, I think that let's start off with what's the concern. So, you know, Jack really is not completing as much work as I think he's capable of, or what. So I would like to have a meeting, and I think that they can say, you know, I've heard that there's a social emotional behavioral affective practice specialist. We also have autism affective practice specialists, and they are a resource for us to come together and an outside person to come in and make sure that we have all of the interventions in place. And that's kind of what's nice about the role, is sometimes when you're in the school building and you're in the weeds, you just can't, you know, see some of the interventions. So we come in, we'll do some environmental observations and really just sometimes see things that you can't see when you're on the ground. So yeah, just, it's really not, I don't think anyone would take offense to it or be upset about requesting that, because it's a good practice just to have someone checking the fidelity of especially if there's already a BIP in place. I like to be checking the fidelity of the BIPs in my school district, so.
Okay. And also we need to mention that you have a BIP with a 504 plan.
Can you have a BIP in a 504? Is that the question?
No, it says, please mention you
Oh.
can have a BIP with a 504 plan.
Like probably at the 504s for like a medical or so, yeah.
Okay.
Usually if it's behavior, the IEP is going to take the place of the 504, but I know students that have like 504s for medical reasons. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, this was truly a hot topic. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. And to bring us home, we have our face, both Latrice Morgan and Adrienne England will join us.
All right, good evening, everyone. We are just here to give you some brief updates. We want all the families to know that the Family School Relationship Survey for the district is open and is available if you have not received the email link or you need another point of access. There's a QR code and a link for you to use to provide us your feedback and voice. Those surveys close on February the 10th, so we would love to have as many families participate in the survey opportunity. We also want to celebrate that there is a new district level PAC happening right now in Jennings. So we have a president there and a vice president. So we welcome Kelly Hansen and the vice president, Janae Ingram, to the team. So hopefully they will be joining SSD's PAC very soon. Thank you. Molly put the information in the chat box too for families. We also want to let you know that the FLI Institute, so the Family Leadership Institute, we have begun to accept applications, and you can apply for that. Those meetings will take place on April 19th, April 26th, and May the 3rd of this year from 5:30 to 8 p.m. at Central Office. So if you know of anyone who would be interested, please share that information. All right, we have a few learning opportunities available in the coming weeks. So we do have a lunch and learn for those of you who may be interested in learning more about applied behavior analysis in special school districts. We will have the director of our ABA department, Jenny Frisbee, presenting during a lunch and learn on February 22nd from 11:30 to noon. If you are not able to participate at that time, all of our meetings will be recorded and available for review on our YouTube channel. We will also have a member of the Productive Living Board on March the 1st from 11:30 to noon, and a workshop from the Director of Advocacy at Sunny Hill regarding connecting to funded services on March the 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. So please mark your calendars, plan to attend, or at least watch the videos after they've been recorded for more information. We do also have a few community outreach efforts available. These all take place at the Family Resource Hub located at North Tech High School, which is at 1700 Durhakey Road. On February the 10th, this Friday, we will have a representative from the Community Action Agency of St. Louis County there to provide information and assistance with utilities, rental assistance, weatherization, and other things that families may need access to. On February 21st, from 11 o'clock to noon, we will have a representative from the Higher Education Consortium present to talk with us about secondary options, postgraduate outcomes, and information for students, anyone 16 years of age or older. So this is even for family members who are looking for alternatives and other options for education, schooling, and work. And lastly, we have our Family Cafe, which will also take place on February 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. This is a great opportunity for families to come together, join in a structured conversation where we build community, we support one another, and we all participate in this wonderful dialogue to support our community, our staff, our students, and our families. So please consider joining us. Those are your FACE updates. Please let us know if you need anything. If you need FACE, please contact us at face@ssdmo.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrienne. And one final thing, for those of our families that are friends with us on Facebook, they did post a Summer Recreation Council of Greater St. Louis. So they're starting to put out guides for all summer opportunities for our families. I just wanted to remind you that you can find that on our Facebook page. Thank you, Dr. Carter.
Hi, first of all, Adrienne, you trumped me again because I've been trying to get Kelly Hansen to be a part of the PAC in Jennings for forever. Her first excuse was, well, I work for SSD. It don't matter. Now, 2 to my 0, okay.
We got her at the Family Cafe. We hooked her with the structured conversations and the community building.
Go kids, okay?
But yeah, I was like, that darn Adrienne again, for it again. Okay. We thank you for all the information that was placed in the chat. And again, let me reiterate, we're here to help families now. As a social scientist, I also understand that it takes time to change rules. It also takes time to come up with new ways of doing things. Please keep in mind that this forum is to help families now. So the information that is presented today is to help a parent today and not as times change. Not to beat a dead horse, we thank you for your information, but today we need to know how to work the system today. So with that being said, we are now on PAC business. Don't forget to look at the Recreation Counselor Summer Program. They offer grants for summer school. Keep that in mind. PAC business. Please, if you are the renewing districts, we need you to keep a PAC. Okay, so please, ma'am, please, sir, we would like for you to renew. We will be putting the information back in the newsletter for you to renew. It's a simple link. You put what district, your first and last name, and you can do that. If you are somebody who is interested in joining the PAC, which I'm going to send Kelly an email myself so I can get on the PAC before you do. And so that you can start, you have to be voted in. Okay, so that's how that is. Shout out to Monica, she's still here. Gone girl. That's when you are tried and true student. You still here with your professor. I'm gonna allow Jennifer to tell us more. I know we talked about it in face, but Jennifer, I would like for you to tell us more and how important it is for us to fill out the family survey. And you can do that for me. And then we'll come back to me again because we have 2 more things we have to talk about, and then we have to do public comments. Jennifer, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer Henry in communications. This is the first year that we have done the family school survey that included the partner districts. And so we want to make sure that we're getting a good representation of all of our families across the district. The survey closes on this Friday, February 10th, and we've only had about 600 people respond. So pretty low participation rate. The survey really does help inform our schools and our leadership's decisions going forward. And it also helps us know where our strengths are and where we can see some improvement. So without your feedback, we can't make those changes that are needed. And so we really do encourage you to fill out that survey and share your thoughts. And I hope that you'll encourage your fellow parents to do the same.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Christina. Hey, I was wondering, it's difficult sometimes to get parent participation with these surveys. It's like feast or famine sometimes. I get you. and everything, because we do have the same thing with our district and some of the things we're doing. Is there a possibility that you could leave the window open until like Sunday evening at midnight and maybe send out an e-blast to families to remind them of that on Sundays? Because I don't know about other parents, but if you hit me something between now and Friday, unless I'm like, whoa, I need to do this. Sure. Usually I'm logging on Sunday afternoon, got to send this teacher a note, got to send this into school. Oh, the survey. Okay, I better do. People are prepping for the week. So it's just my 2 cents.
Sure.
And everything, because I really value what you guys put into these surveys and the fact that you're doing this with the partner districts as well. And I want it to be good information to help inform decisions and things like that for families. So again, thank you also for doing all of this.
Sure. And so since this is the first year that we've included the partner districts, if you have, I appreciate the feedback because of course extending it over the weekend when you have a little bit more free time is helpful. We'll make sure to do that and send a reminder over the weekend to do it. But if there are other things that would make it easier for you or other families in your schools or districts to do it, please let us know, because we want to make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible, that we're getting equal voice from across the districts, and without participation, from each district, I don't think we even have each district represented at this point. The data is not as good. Now we'll make action plans based on the information that we do get, but we want to make sure it's applicable to each district. So if you have other suggestions about how we can improve completion rate, that would be appreciated as well.
And you want us to email you, or you just?
Yeah, you can email me. Okay. Just for simplicity, you can email if you have my email address, or you can email it to communications@ssdmo.org.
Okay. Great thoughts, great thoughts. And we could sit and brainstorm on how to do this all night, but we don't have that kind of time.
Just go ahead and email me. That'll be good.
Yes, ma'am. So moving forward, next, we talked about nominations. We, all the executive committee positions are open. I am no longer running for president, so that 3rd year is a charm. Not commission. So the president, vice president, correspondence secretary, recording secretary, and parliamentarian is open. We will not have a meeting in March, but we will provide a newsletter with that information. In order for the work to continue, we need dedicated, strong people to continue. Going in, I didn't know it was that many meetings. So you have to be, if you're going to sit in the president's seat, I would suggest that you have flexibility with your meetings. Not everything is going to be virtual. You will have guaranteed 3 meetings a month, and this is not including the one that we're on tonight. So you have to meet governing council meetings and things of that nature. So with that being said, please, ma'am, please, sir, if we have any sirs on here, if you are a member of the SSD PAC, feel free to call me, feel free to ask, talk to me. I will let you know the time commitment. I'm going into other things. I'm not leaving because this has been a bad experience. I should have left last year, but this year it has been phenomenal. Working with SSD, working with you guys as well. So all positions are open. I'm trying to think. Melissa, am I missing anything before we get to public comments?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Renewal, nominations. No meeting in March. Okay, we're now at the part of public comments.
Okay, one second. Okay, I'll read it. It's from Monica Beauchamp, and she said, "Hi, my name is Monica Beauchamp. I'm the mom of 2 amazing boys. I see their frustrations and other emotions from other children without the proper outlet to release those emotions. Based on my own traumatic experience, growth from that, and a desire to help others, I created a program called Need to Heal, Heal Through Baking. I guide people of all ages to release anxiety and other emotions through baking. I offer this program virtually and have witnessed beautiful results. However, I haven't worked with anyone from my own community, and I definitely see an area where I can help others, and I'd love to impact and support those who are in my own neighborhood."
Thank you, Monica, for the information, and we will forward it on to others. Before we adjourn, local PACs. Do we have any updates? Not hearing anything. Rebecca.
Well, our whole DEI, we were working under our DEI. I was working under DEI to get our local PAC formed. And Dr. Terry Harris and Dr. Aisha Grace, everyone left. However, we did start a district PAC Facebook page to gather people. And so we have that going, and we're in some further meetings, but we do have a district PAC Facebook page for Rockwood.
Good job. Because you've been working on that all year. Anyone else? May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting of the SSD PAC for February 8th, 2023? Oh, we have another Nikki. Nikki, you had a question?
Yeah, I won't be too long-winded. I just want to. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I won't be too long-winded or get off of the agenda or off topic, but I just seems like traditional school, non-traditional school, the accommodations for our special school district children, it seems like it's highly impactful on their education, this overuse of exclusionary discipline. Is there any way we can get a discussion going amongst the parental group in terms of some kind of social justice and, insertion into the programmatic offerings within this regular school programming or BIT or any of those tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions? Or are any of those in place for the traditional program? Current state.
If I am understanding your question, you're asking about if there are any traditional behavior improvement plans that are in, and I might be wrong, so I might need you to come back and give it back to me. Within the district and or within SSD, dealing with social action or something to that effect?
It's pretty consistent either way. A BIP can be inclusive of a program within a traditional school setting, such as North Tech, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically, we would need more information as to what the actual situation is, or yes, that can be something that we can discuss with SSD. Here's the thing about partnering district. Each district does their own individual thing as we are learning. We are getting ready to send out the mid-year review of our 4 focus areas. And I do know, and also as a teacher in a district, I do know that most districts, if we do not hold their feet to the fire, they will not accommodate and or properly adhere to what is going on with special school district and or our children, hence the parent advisory council. So with that being said, as an individual parent, as an individual person, you don't have to wait on the group to fight for whatever you need, you feel needed for your particular child or that particular situation. Here's the caveat. Within your local PAC, you can work with that PAC, and you guys can be that force to change that particular district. Social action advocacy is all across the board, okay? It doesn't matter if it's a white district, a Black district, a Hispanic district, it doesn't matter. Social action is social action because our children are a part of the ADA under that covering. So if they are not getting their services, then it becomes injustice, correct? So we have to make sure as parents, individually first, to go and talk to that case manager, to talk to that person, and also that principal, that district leader, that person. 2, we will make that notation, Melissa, make that notation that that's a topic for probably the next president, because we've already gotten our system set for the rest of this year. Wendy, you can probably work that in there some kind of way. That's that. As a district PAC, I will talk to us, I will throw it out. And I also suggest, Ms. Nikki, that you join us through your district. We have open nominations. Please put your email in the chat, and we will make sure you get all the information you need so you can advocate for children in your auspices and abroad. Yes, Rebecca. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
I wanted to just make a quick mention. If she wants to email me, there's a couple of things going on. The Department of Education had a release on like July 19th about school guidance for unnecessary restriction and suspensions and things. And there are avenues for districts, like partner districts, to you advocate to get American Rescue dollars. There's also a couple of initiatives going on in Missouri, like the Missouri Department of Developmental Disabilities. I know some good contacts there who are working, especially with the intersection of race and disability and the higher suspension. So if she wants to reach out to me, I could guide her to those contacts that might help her.
All right.
I didn't want to talk over anyone, but I just want to make sure that I maybe speak slower and clarify. My daughter is a partnering school. I don't know if it's a partnering school. I would think Jennings would be a partnering school. That's the district that we reside in. My daughter is a student of North Tech. My ask is that if there is not in my case, I have not found that there is a bid for traditional students that are faced with these behavioral challenges with their peers.
So she does not receive services from
No,
SSD?
ma'am. No, ma'am. I am a parent that happens to be in a unique scenario and in an outlier school, if you will, or institution, if you will.
So what we will have to do is talk about this offline so we can get the details. My number is 573-234-4779. Again, my number is 573-234-4779. And we can talk about this offline to find out exactly in what direction we need to push you in so you can get the services and the help that you need. Okay?
I appreciate your time, and I wasn't going to take up too much of this platform, so I do appreciate it.
But baby, when you struggling and you need help, you'll go to everywhere. Help! Somebody
Agreed.
help.
Agreed.
So don't worry about it. That's why we open up the floor to you. And there are several professionals, I mean, more than enough professionals here that if I don't know and we can't get the right answers, I know that they will make sure that you get what you need, even if it's outside their auspices. All right. Hearing none, it is 8:32. Ma'am, please have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, may I have a second, please?
Was that Rebecca?
Yeah, that was Rebecca. Who seconded?
Denise.
Who is me?
I said Denise.
Oh,
Oh,
Denise. Okay. I got you.
Okay, it has been moved and second to adjourn our meeting for February the 8th, 2023. Thank you and have a great night. Goodbye.
Good night, everyone.
See you in April. No, I won't. I'll see y'all in May. See y'all in May. Bye. Good night.